Hi boys and girls. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make a responsive grid layout. Now responsive is the same as liquid, meaning that these layouts will shrink or grow depending on how big the screen size of the device you're looking at it on. And a grid is the layout structure of the web page. Alright, so let me show you what I mean by grid. So we got this example here of a website layout, and you'll see there are 12 semi-transparent white columns, right? And you'll notice the page is broken up into 12 columns, and here we have this box here goes for 9 columns, so this is 9 columns wide. This box here is 3 columns wide. And that's pretty much how you would use a grid layout. It breaks up your content into different size columns. So on this page, it uses 12 columns. 16 columns is also like a standard one. But to begin with, we are going to make a simple 4-column layout just to get you guys, get your head wrapped around how things work. All right, so the first thing I want to tell you is a grid layout is made up of rows and columns. All right, so kind of like a table. So we're going to have everything made up out of divs. So first, we have div, class, row. So this will be one row. And inside this row, we're going to have a number of divs that add up to, so this is going to be, this example is a 4-column responsive layout. All right. So the divs in this row will have to add up to 4. So you could have div, class, and I'm going to call this call dash. I'm going to use call dash in front of all the classes to specify how wide columns are going to be. So if I had call dash 1, that would mean this div is 1 column wide. So 1 column wide. All right. And if I had another div, another one, another one, another one. So in this row, we have 4 separate columns. Each of them is 1 column wide, which is completely legit. And then let's say underneath this row, we had a whole different row. And in this row, let's say we had 3 divs. The first one will be 1 column wide, the second would be 2, and the third would be 1 column wide. So that would add up. So these add up to 4. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, that's 4. So that's what they all have to add up to the total of 4 columns. That's the point. And all right. So anyway, this is the HTML we're using. Now we have to make the CSS. All right. So I'll keep that up here so you can see. And all right. So we're going to start off in the CSS now. And we're going to define how wide 1 column is, and 2 columns, and 3 columns, and 4 columns. So let me copy over this comment I have. So in a 4-column layout, it divides the web page into 4 possible columns. To get the width value, you must divide the number by the total number of columns. For example, call dash 1 is equal to 1 divided by 4. So 1 divided by the total number of columns. And that is equal to 25%. So here we have how wide 1 column is. And if you were going to have a 2-column wide div, so let's say call dash 2, you would say 2 divided by 4. And that's 50%. And if you were going to have a 3-column wide div, that would be 3 divided by 4, which is 75%. And if you were going to have a 4 column wide div, so 4 divided by 4 is 100%, because it's 100% wide. It's the complete, layout. And of course, me telling you how wide these things are really doesn't do anything up here. So we have a few more things to add. So the next thing we're going to do, let me copy this over. All right. So now you learned about attribute selectors the other day, and the reason why is because we're going to use them to make the grid layout. Now we could get away without using them, because what we need to do is each of these 4 classes here, we need to make every column div, they have to float. We want to give them padding and we want to give them a border. So I could go here and I could type, float left and padding 15 pixels and border pixel solid red, like that. Border. I could do that. But then I'd have to do that for every single one of these. And then you'd have to do that for every single one if you had a column, like a 12 column or a 16 column wide, 16 column layout. So you don't want to do that. That would be like not the correct way to do it. So the best way to do it would be to select any class that starts with call dash. All right, so we're going to use an attribute selector. All right, so here is an attribute selector. So the attribute is class, and if we use that guy equals call dash. So that's going to select any element that has a class that starts with this. Okay? So all 3 of these, even though this is 1, this is 2, they all start with call dash. So this will select any of them that start with that. It could be call dash 1, call dash 2, call dash 3, or call dash 4. So anyway, this is selecting all of them at the same time. And then down here we could add float left and padding, oops, and border 1 pixel solid. All right. So that way we can add these 3 things to all of these in one rule. Easy like that. Okay. Now these guys still aren't working that great. You'll notice that this guy isn't over here next to this guy. All right. That's because we still have a couple more things to add. All right. So for one thing, our first row is, if we look back at the HTML, has 4 divs in it, each 1 column wide. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this guy is sitting here next to it. So he shouldn't even be near this row. If he's in the next row, this guy should be down below. So that means what we have to do is clear the space after this guy. We're going to clear the space after this so that nothing floats next to it. And to do that, we are going to, let me copy this comment. Okay. So let's see, what is this here? So column 1, column 2 divs inside the row, they're all floating to the left. So that means they're taking out of the flow of the page. That other elements will be placed as if the columns don't exist unless we do something. The following selector will select the space after the content of the row div. It doesn't add any content, but it clears. Okay, so let me show you. So we're going to use, dot row. So this is for any div that has class equal row, right? Like this guy or that guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to select after it. And we're going to first you add content, and because you're supposed to always add that, but we're not going to add anything. It's just empty space. We're not adding any content. And what we're doing is we're going to clear the float. So clear both. We're clearing any floating, and then we're going to set display like a table. So display like a table and clearing both will make sure that the page will be just laid out like a table would be, with rows and columns. Alright, so that's the third thing we've added. And then the last thing we need to add is, right now there's a problem. This guy should be over here next to this guy. But since these divs all have padding, here we gave them padding, right? That is added in addition to the width. So we need to use the universal selector, which is, I have a comment for that. Comment. So the asterisk is the universal selector, which selects every element on the page. And we want, so we're going to use that. And what we're going to do is for every element on the page, we're going to use box sizing. Oops. And then we're going to set that to border box. Now what that does is it takes any padding or border width and sticks it, combines it with the width of the element. So that this, like for example, this div is 25% wide, and it has 15 pixels of padding on each side, and it has 1 pixel of border on each side. But it takes that padding and border and it smashes it in with the 25%, makes the whole thing 25% wide. That way you don't have to worry about things fitting or not. And here we go. So this is what we got. First row, 4 divs, 1 column wide each. Second row, 3 divs. This one's 1 wide, this one's 2 wides, that one's 1 wide. And that is a basic 4-column grid layout. Now you can use this for any, you can come up with whatever amount of columns you want. Let me show you how to do that. So let's say we were going to have, instead of 4 columns, we're going to use 6 columns. Alright? And I'm just going to change this. So we're going to change that so that 6 columns wide, and we'll make that 6 columns wide. 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1. That's 6. Okay. And now we got to fix the widths of these things. So we go back up to the widths. So now there's not. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now, if it's 6 columns wide, it's 100%. If it was 1 column wide, so you're going to take, let me bust out my old calculator. So if it's 1 column wide, that would be 1 divided by 6 equals this long number. When you get this long number, you just want to use, and then I guess you multiply this by 100 to get the actual percentage. So 16.66 is what you're going to use for this width. 16.66. And then if you were going to do 2 columns divided by the 6 total, that's, and I guess you do times 100, 33.33. 33.33. 3 columns wide, so 3 divided by 6. I'm going to do that in my head. That's 50%. 4 columns wide, so 4 divided by 6 times 100. That's 66.66%. Now you don't want to do, you don't ever want to round up to make this like 66.67. That'll screw things up. Just keep it like that. 5 divided by 6 is 83.33. And then, of course, 6 divided by 6 is 100%. Okay. And then over here, we got 6 columns and 6 columns. And those are our Oh, I'm running out of time. Anyway, that's a grid layout, folks. Adios.